Hello, everyone, and welcome to our discussion entitled Moving into Primary School, the Transition from Preschool to Primary School in 2021. Those of you joining us who have a kindergarten child starting prep next year are most probably wondering how, as parents, you can help your child prepare for their first year of primary school in this new environment, and how schools may be gearing up to cater to this unique group of children who haven't necessarily had the time to explore the world of kindergarten as much as those before them. A short quote from our Premier. This has been a tough year for all of us, including some of our littlest Victorians. We know that starting school is a huge milestone. Victorian families can rest assured our dedicated early childhood and school teachers are working together to support Victorian children's transition from kinder to prep. Today we welcome back Dr. Elizabeth Rouse, who is the Senior Lecturer in Early Childhood Education from Deakin University. Dr. Elizabeth Rouse has worked in the field of education for over 30 years. She's taught in both early childhood settings as well as in schools. Additionally, she has also worked in special education settings, community-based family support programs, and as a policy advisor at both state and local government level. She's worked in initial teacher education since 2010. Dr. Rouse has developed a strong research profile in the area of family school community partnerships, which was the focus of her doctoral dissertation. Her publication, Partnerships in the Early Years, 2019, Oxford University Press, framed by her doctoral research, is now a prescribed text in a number of Australian universities, as well as in Europe and North America. More recently, her research has focused on partnerships during transitions within and across education settings. Hello, Dr. Rouse, and welcome.
Hi, Moira. How are you? And thank you for asking me to come back again. Before we start, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we all meet today and pay my respects to any elders past and present.
Thank you. Dr. Rouse, Liz.
Yeah, Liz. Please call me Liz.
I will. Things have certainly improved in Victoria since the last time we spoke about remote learning a few months ago, which is fantastic. The year's definitely ending on a high note, and we're all optimistic that it'll continue in the new year. So let's talk about our littlest Victorians. They've had a year with probably not much face-to-face contact with their kindergarten, perhaps a small amount of online kindergarten sessions. Many parents may be wondering that if missing out on this part of their childhood might mean that there's still a bit of work to do to get them ready for their entry into prep. So to put things into perspective, we still actually have a few weeks of kindergarten left, don't we?
Yeah, and I think that's really important, Maura, because I think there's still 3 weeks or thereabouts, 2.5 weeks left. And I think it's really important that the focus on getting children prepared for the next step doesn't take away from the joy of the last 3 or 4 weeks that they've got at preschool. And I think that's really important. And then, of course, there's Christmas. And I think Christmas or the end of the celebrations, because I know a lot of your families don't celebrate Christmas, but that end of the year ritual that all families go through, I think is also a really important time that we have in front of us. And I don't want children to lose track of where they are now with the focus on who they're going to be in February. So enjoy the last 3 weeks of the preschool year and really enjoy them for what they are rather than for what they represent of missing out. And I think that's really important. And I know the teachers in the preschools are going to be doing a lot of work around these next 3 weeks about celebrating the children's success, who they are, and those relationships and those friendships. So it's a very important time for all children, particularly where I know children will have been visiting their schools because schools are having transition days or welcome to school days. And so they've got that sort of ambivalence between being a school child and being a preschool child. So it's really important to look at the 3 weeks and focusing on who they are.
Yeah, it's a really nice time in kindergarten at the end of the year. There's a lot of, they quite often have little plays and things like that. They do celebrate
parent concerts, making presents.
Concerts. Yeah, so it's a really fun time, and I think that there will be obviously a lot of things going on between the kindergartens and the primary schools in that transitional phase. So I recently read an ABC News article that really pointed out that parents need not worry about their child whether their child is school ready, it's the schools that are in the best position to assist their children in their transition to prep in 2021. And there was a quote from a parent who's also a primary teacher who stated, "I have every faith teachers all over the country will be thinking outside the box to ensure the transition is as smooth as possible. In fact, 2021 might even be the best we've seen as the new year sees more play-based learning to make up for missed transition days." Can you comment on that at all?
Yes, I think that's really important. One of the things that we know leads to successful transition for children moving from preschool into school is that understanding of continuity, so that they're actually not starting from scratch in a prep classroom or a foundation classroom. They're actually building on what they've already got and what they already know and what they've already experienced. So having that introducing play into the prep year, which I know many schools have already done, supports the children to move from the play learning that they've had at preschool into the more structured classroom learning that they'll have towards the end of their prep year, moving into year one, where things become much more structured. So I think it's really exciting when I read that article from the Premier that play is being recognised as an important conduit for learning at the foundation years. And I think the children's kindergarten teacher has strong understanding of play and how those children have played and what they've learnt through that play, which they can be working in partnership with the foundation teachers to really explore what that means for each individual child and support the foundation teachers in introducing that child into the classroom through that play-based learning.
So with play-based learning, would you be able to define that a little bit more for parents who might not have a full understanding of what that actually means?
Yeah, I think it is a really important question, because a lot of people just see children playing. And if we're playing, well, we're not doing any real work because we all play. But what's really important is when you think about play as learning, and this is where you need the teacher's lens, is as a teacher, as an early years teacher, I can know that for you, Moira, my important goal for you is that you develop some friendships with other children. So I'm going to create a play environment, maybe set up a little kitchen in the back of the classroom, or put some dress ups out where you can play with some other children. And I know that you really like Liz, so that I might set up a play environment where you and Liz can play together, and I might foster some conversations between you while you're playing. And so it's not just children playing, it's really structured play, because the teachers are thinking really clearly around what do I need to support that child or that group of children to move down that learning continuum. And the same thing for literacy and numeracy. I know that there's been a lot of concerns raised, particularly out in some of the suburbs near you, that there's so many children who don't speak English at home and they've missed some vital English learning because they haven't been in preschool. And I think creating a learning environment where children can actually talk to each other and just use language in that play environment, pretend writing when they're doing menus or having a restaurant. So all of that literacy learning, numeracy learning can happen really well through play, because the children don't know that they're learning. But the teacher is fostering, she knows what that child needs to learn. And so creating a play environment that allows that to happen through her own guidance or his own guidance, but also through the context that she sets up. So for parents, don't worry that the children are playing and not learning. It's really, really targeted play. It's not just the children out in the backyard climbing a tree, which is really good learning, but it's purposeful learning through that play, which I think is really important.
Yeah, when you speak about that, it does bring back a lot of memories. When I've been on kindergarten duty, or when I was teaching as well, and just the little activities that were set up, little stations, and sometimes they would then rotate them, but just a little bit of the banter between the kids while they were playing with the clay, making things with plasticine or box construction. And I'm sure many parents, box construction, we got several things coming home with that I didn't know what they were, but they had fun making them. Always great things. And you knew that fine motor skills, We're being
but also
kind.
the numeracy, because if you're doing a box construction, you have to know how to assemble the boxes so that the big one doesn't topple the little one over, and how are you going to stick them. So that's that problem solving. It's engineering, really. It's science. So think not about what the children aren't doing, but really look closely at what the children are doing. And I think that's where the foundation teachers, with the support of the early childhood teachers, can really get their head around how that child learns and what play experiences have really supported that.
Thank you. The woman in the article also commented that kids are so resilient, they will be just fine. I think it's the parents with sometimes predisposed ideas about how starting school should look that might suffer a little bit or might be a bit anxious. And I'm sure every parent gets a little anxious about their child's first days at school. I know there's a parent, even though I was reasonably confident that my kids would transition well into a school environment, it was still, it's a bit of an emotional time when you're letting them go into this new world. My son actually said he was happy as long as he had the same blocks at school as he did at kinder. So, he also had his friends with him who'd spent most of the year with. So thinking about that, what sort of ways can parents help their child to prepare over the school holidays?
I think there's a couple of things in there. One of them is the parents' emotions, and I think that our emotions do feed into the children. The children might be really excited, but as a parent, your child's making a life milestone. You as a parent are making a milestone. You're going from being a preschool parent to a school parent. Now, if this is your first child, that's a big leap for you. If this is your last child, that's another life stage that you're going through. So I think it's really important to think about putting yourselves in the shoes of the child rather than putting yourselves in the shoes of the parent. And I know that's really hard when emotions are flying. I think the other thing to think about for 2021, which is possibly different to 2020, and I don't know what's happening in the schools for next year, particularly in your area, but at the moment parents aren't allowed into the school grounds. And I think that's going to be quite a challenge for parents. But I think it's really important to use to explain to the child about what the drop-off's going to look like, so that you're preparing them to say, when you start school on the first day, I'm going to leave you at the gate and I'll wave goodbye and you're going to go into the classroom. And I'm sure the school will set up an environment where the prep teachers will be there and all that sort of, so that you're really clear. And I think it's also important for parents not to say things like, I'm going to be so lonely when you're not here, I'm going to miss you when you're at school, because then the child starts feeling guilty. I'm going off to school and I'm making mum sad because mum's going to miss me, so I have to stay at home because my mum will miss me. So it's really important to use language like, I'm really excited that you're going off to school. I'm going to be here to pick you up while you're at school. I'm going to be doing these things. I'm going to be doing the shopping. I'm going to be doing the vacuuming. I'll get the dinner ready. And when I pick you up at 3:30, we will have a nice time together. So you're not putting the emotion back onto the child to say that I'm going to miss you. I don't, because then the child will think they shouldn't be going. And they're having that ambivalence about being excited, but about upsetting their parents. So I think that's really important. And I think the other thing is that it's a long time between now and the 1st of February. We're only on the 1st of December, so we've got 2 months and a lot happening. And so not starting that conversation too early, because it's not all about school. We've got 2 months. And so the child's anxiety levels are going to increase if they're already anxious, the more you talk about it. So keep it cool. Wait for the child's cues. If the child asks you questions, then give them an answer. But you don't necessarily have to keep perpetuating that thinking. They're going to have grandma and grandpa and all of these other people going on about them being a big school child, that your role as a parent is to contain it and to listen to them and to hear what their concerns are and give them really honest answers. So I think that's really important. The other thing that you touched on was the notion of friendships. And I think that's really important. And we know from the research that children settle really well when they have a familiar person at the school. Now, this year has created a context where for many preschool children, the opportunity to build those strong, rich friendships was taken away from them because of the way that they were learning. Now, that's not to say that they won't make them, and I know that the teachers in the preschools at the moment will be their focus will be on creating friendships and relationships for children, particularly those children who are going to the same schools. So I think that's really important. But the other thing is that not every child starts school with a friend. My son, when he started preschool, he didn't know anybody. When he started prep, he didn't know anybody at the particular school because he'd been in a childcare centre in my work, and so he was at school where we lived. And so sometimes children do start school without having a friend. And I think there's some things that parents can be doing, and one of the things is that finding out who your child, when they've been going to the school for these school visits, if they've been having them, who are they talking about? They come home and say, I sat next to a boy called Jeremy today. I saw a lovely girl called Miriam. Who are those children? Maybe sort of contacting the school to say, my son's been talking about this child. Can I give the parent my phone number? Can you give the parent my phone number so we can perhaps set up a play date over the holidays, over the Christmas, the January break? Also, who else do you know at that school? So you may not know any other prep children, but you might have a cousin, a neighbour, a friend, a child you do swimming lessons with who also goes to that school in an older grade. Setting up some play dates with those children so that they can become familiar with somebody else at the school, so that when they go to the school, they've got a buddy. And I know schools have buddies, but they're their buddy.
They're going to be very important. The buddy system will play a fairly large role next year, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and I think if the child starts school and when they're out in the playground and here's Muhammad, who they've been playing with, seeing over the school, like the holidays, they've been riding their bike at the park, they'll see them in the playground. At least it's one person that they know. So I think while it's important for the children to have a friend in the classroom, there's other ways children make friends. We make friends because we're interested in people. We make friends because we have connections. We make friends because we like the same things. So children will make those friends. And again, the play-based learning in the foundation classroom will support those relationship development. It will also support children's being able to make those relationships because they're doing things together. So they'll make those friends really quickly.
Yeah, I think I've always thought, with particularly some kids, oh, you like footy? I like footy. We're both friends. Let's go and play together.
For the Bulldogs. I vote for the Bulldogs. Yes.
So there sometimes might be very small connections, but they don't need that deep, the adults sort of really need that as much as the kids. Kids are just happy with, oh, I live on that street too, or,
I've got a dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's really important. And I was going to say something else, and I've forgotten what it was, but it might come back to me. So we'll keep going.
Okay. So, you might have touched on this a little bit already, but in the case of parents who are either new to the area or don't have a family or social network nearby, how can they connect with others to help their children form relationships and socialise before they start school? So you've already mentioned that, that they could possibly find out from the school or give their details to say, look, my child's spoken about this particular kid that he met on orientation. Is there a possibility that, you can give my details to them? And, setting up things, but maybe also some social groups, that would definitely be positive if they connect with maybe some community groups as well in the area.
Yeah.
I think the area.
Yeah. I think, and that's really important to because it's important for the parents as well as it is for the children. I think we focus very much on the child starting school, but it's really important for the parent to make those contacts, because you'll find, and I know you'll probably say the same as me, is that some of my best friends now, my children are all adults, but some of my best friends are the parents of the friends that my children made friends with in that prep year. We're still best friends, 20 years later. So I think you do make those friendships through school, and where in the past you'd meet parents standing outside the classroom at the end of the day, you'd sort of introduce yourself and you'd meet. We won't have that same opportunity this year as we would in past years, because we'll be leaving our children at the gate. But I would also think that the schools hopefully will be making opportunities for parents to meet together. so that they're, and I know most of the schools will have a classroom rep. And so that classroom parent, who's usually a parent who's already familiar with the school, and they'll often set up social events for the parents so that they can get together and, oh, you're Jeremy's mother. Oh, he talks about him all the time. He really likes it. Really, can we set? So you'll make those connections really early on in the piece. So I think that's also really important to do that, because if you can connect with the parents, then the children will be able to connect as well.
That's right, and I think a lot of parents will try and make that extra special effort to make those connections, because they've been kind of missing them, throughout this year with remote learning and not being actually having that face-to-face pick-up time and drop-off time and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and hopefully that will, as we ease into COVID normal, hopefully parents will have more access to being at the school. I think that's probably something that hopefully can evolve as we move through the year.
Yes. So I'm not sure if there's anything else that you wanted to cover.
I think the other thing to me, the main thing, the other thing I think is to help the child become familiar with the school is, if I know that whereas in the past I've always said, I'll go and walk through the school and take a picnic lunch and sit on the playground with your children. I don't think you're allowed to do that now, but I'm thinking certainly going for walks around to the school, walking around the outside of the school, pointing out different, I wonder what that building is. I think that building might be the toilet. That's where the toilets are. Things that you can actually see from the perimeter that you can familiarise. Oh, look at the climbing frame. That looks like a really great thing to climb. Look how high that is. That'd be great. I'd love to hear you. Or look at this huge oval. You'll be able to play footy. Or here's a lovely tree where you can take Barbie and sit underneath. So those sorts of things. So although you can't go into the school grounds, you can certainly walk through the perimeter, around the outside of them, and start pointing at, so that the child is becoming familiar with the environment of the school as well over that time. Is really important. I think the other part of the ritual is the buying of the uniform and the shoes and the bags and all of those things. And I think that's a really exciting time for children. I wouldn't be doing that too early, for two reasons. One is that the children will grow and you'll buy these clothes that they won't fit. But also you want them to be leading up to it. So I'd be sort of thinking about that towards the end of January, but let them wear their school shoes in. Because they'll have had 8 weeks of running around with bare feet or thongs or hardly anything. So getting them to wear their school shoes in, so wearing them around the house to get their school shoes comfortable is really important. But so that nice ritual of going shopping for the school uniform is a really lovely time. And I remember my daughter going, she was so funny, she was so precious. We went up to the school uniform shop, and our school uniform was in a blue check, but the uniform shop only had a pink one. So he said, I'll just try this one on her for size to see, and we'll order the right size in. So she'd got it into her head she was going to wear this pink dress to school. Well, it was all hell to play, because she was having to wear a blue, but I don't want the blue one, I want the pink one. So that's really important, that if there is a school uniform, then how do we sort of say, look, I know it's not your favourite colour, but you have to wear the blue dress, but when you come home, you can change. So those are the sorts of things that we don't worry about. They find really, really challenging and precious. So I think finding out from them, not asking them what's worrying you, but listening to their body image, but also what they're saying to other people. And that's why talking to some other children from the school is really important, particularly older children, if you know anybody, because they'll be sharing things around the rules of the school as the children know them, not the rules of the school as the teachers tell them. Things like who you play, where you don't play, all those sorts of those unwritten rules that are important for children, because they want to fit in. And so if you can have those older children who can share some of those stories with with your child, I think that's really important. And the other thing is, the lunchbox, and they talk about the lunch boxes and the wrapping up of the sandwiches. One of the most difficult things for children to do, it sounds really naff, is to unwrap the plastic cling film off the sandwiches. So either having some picnics at home in the backyard, or some picnics down at the park over the summer break, where you can take picnic lunches and children can practice opening a lunchbox, opening their snack boxes, or getting those Ziploc bags, which I know are really expensive, and so I'm not trying to make people spend money, but some things that are going to make it easier for the children. Thinking about what you put in the lunchbox, because for some children going to school, they may not have had convenient sandwiches, sandwiches and snack boxes and things that many Australian background families would be very familiar with. A lot of the other families, that's not what we have. So think about, or children don't want to take a sandwich to lunch. So thinking about what's going to go in the lunchbox and how the children can navigate the lunchbox, because we'll have little play and big play. And sometimes little plays first and sometimes big plays first. So what do you eat first? What do you eat second? And what if we don't want to eat everything? People stack up these lunch boxes full of food that the child is never going to be able to eat, because we have to eat our meal before we can go and play. And I just want to go and play. So I'm not going to eat all this stuff in my lunchbox, but I can't go and play because I've got to eat all this food. So think those sorts of things. The child's not going to die of starvation between 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock. So packing what they can eat and knowing that they are going to be absolutely starving when they get home. And I think one of the things that my children, it took my husband a long time to deal with this one. My oldest boy, when he came home from school, he would sit down and have 12 Weet-Bix. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because he was starving, and I wasn't going to have him eating chips and biscuits and lollies and rubbish. The healthiest thing in the whole world is Weet-Bix and milk. So you cannot get a more healthy, nutritious dinner. So he would sit down and eat Weet-Bix, and then he would have dinner, and he wouldn't have as much to eat at dinner, but that was okay with us because he still sat at the table, he still had something on his plate, and we shared a meal together. But he was starving at 3 o'clock, and so I let him eat, but eating something that's nutritious and is going to fill him up, because he had hollow legs. So I think that's really important. That don't worry if they're not eating during the day at school, but give them enough that they can eat, but feed them when they get home with something that's going to sustain them and fill them up, and not lollies and chips and Tim Tam biscuits and things like that.
Something sustainable. That actually reminds me of a little anecdote. I remember going with my mum to pick my brother up from prep in the first part where they only do a half day. So I went into the prep room with my mother and my brother. At the time in the 70s, they had the little suitcases, the little old sort of cardboard
I remember those.
And he opened the suitcase, and inside was a icy pulse ice cream stick with ice cream that was melted. And he was so devastated. He said, "Oh, I was saving that for later."
Oh dear.
I've never forgotten it. It's so funny. We do remind him from time to time. So on that note, what I will say is that we are not going live due to unforeseen circumstances, but people do have the opportunity to still ask questions if they like. So what you can do if you're wanting to ask Dr. Rouse a question is post a comment on our library Facebook page under the event. And what we'll do is we will send them to Dr. Rouse, and she'll get back to us, and then we will let you know what the answer is for that question. So thank you so much.
The other thing, Maura, just too, is if parents really, if you've got lots of parents who would really like to hear more, I'm more than happy to come back perhaps in early February. If parents have got some ideas about that time, so please don't hesitate to contact me if parents are wanting a follow-up session, if they can't get those answers from the Facebook page. But I'm more than happy to answer any questions, because I know parents will probably have more questions than I've been able to address. So it's such an exciting time for families.
And thanks again for joining us in the discussion. And we'll see you again in
next
the new year.
We will. All right. Thanks,
Thank
Maura.
you.
Thanks, families. Okay. Bye.